The Reincarnationist Papers by D. Eric Maikranz, or Maikranz, I don't know. Anyway, as this book proclaims here on its title, this is the source material for that movie that came out a couple years ago with Mark Wahlberg in it called Infinite, which I have not seen because I don't have Paramount Plus, but I've heard it was absolutely awful. But movie aside, I found this book in a Goodwill store for $1.99, and it sounded really interesting, and so I picked it up on a lark and decided to read it. And oh my goodness, this freaking book right here is one of the most, maybe the most frustrating things I have ever read, because this book could have been so much, but it ended up being so little. So, what is the story of the Reincarnationist Papers? What is this book actually about? And let me know um, down in the comments how closely or not closely it resembles the movie Infinite. I wouldn't know again. But anyway, the story of the Reincarnationist Papers is that there is a young man named Evan Michaels. He lives in Los Angeles, and he works as an arsonist. He takes money from people to torch certain buildings and houses and such to collect insurance money and what have you. And he has the memories of two previous lives beyond just the one that he is living. And this causes some confusion, as it would, until one day, while running from the police and being shot by the police, actually, he stumbles onto the doorstep of a young woman named Poppy, who informs him that he is only one of several people that are called reincarnationists, people who come back after having lived previous lives, and more than that, they remember those lives. And so she takes him to Switzerland, I believe, where there is located an organization called the Cognomina, which is the confederation of these select few individuals who are reincarnationists who remember past lives. And he joins the Cognomina, and that's pretty much it. There is almost nothing that happens in this book. And this is a pretty thick book. It's over 400 pages long, and next to nothing actually happens in this book. That is partly why it is so frustrating, because there's no conflict in this book at all. There's the guy, Evan Michaels, learns that he is what's called a reincarnationist. He is a person who can remember past lives, and then he's also informed that there exists an organization comprised of others like him, and that if he passes certain tests and criteria, he will be able to join that organization. And then he does, and that's pretty much the end. This is a pretty clear example, I think, of an author who had a really kick-ass premise. I mean, I'll give it to this book. The basic idea here is really, really solid. You know, people who, for whatever reason, reincarnate, but not only reincarnate, they remember the fact that they existed in previous incarnations. You could do a lot with that. That's a really cool concept. But Mr. Maikranz, or Maikranz, however it's pronounced, did absolutely nothing with that. This book is the most uneventful, anticlimactic thing I have ever read in my life, and it is nothing more than a catalog of wasted potential and missed opportunity. So, as I said, I think this is a pretty clear example of an author who had a really cool idea, but did not really know what to do with that idea, and didn't really think through how he was going to really tell a story around it, because this thing just limps along until when you finally finish it, it's just like, you know, shooting a dog that's been mangled by a car. You know, it's just like it finally ends after 400 pages of nothing. And it's so frustrating because it could have been so cool. But anyway, so I don't think Mr. Maikranz really knew what he was doing. I believe this is his debut novel. And I think it got published basically solely on the strength of its premise because, again, it has a really cool idea at its heart. It's just that it squanders it. But what I would have done with this book, because what this book lacks so fundamentally is any sense of conflict. But what I would have done with this book, and I'm not trying to, pass myself off as some kind of, professional, someone who can tell, a published author like this what to do, but just speaking what I would have done with this book is I would have made Evan go join the Cognomina organization, which is the confederation of other people like him who remember previous lives. And then I would have had that organization turn out to be sinister and evil. And then the book, which, by the way, this is an epistolary novel. It is presented as presented as a collection of 3 notebooks, which are written by Evan, the main character, and found and translated by D. Eric Maikranz. So it kind of has a slight meta quality to it. But what I would have done with this book is make it be like that movie Wanted. You ever seen that movie Wanted with James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie? It's about a guy who joins an elite group of assassins, and then he thinks that they're like the coolest and that life is awesome now because his life prior to that was kind of crappy. But then he eventually comes to realize that, oh, these people are actually evil, and he has to set about, taking them down and, dismantling the organization which he was once so impassioned about. I would have made this book be something like that. It would have given some kind of conflict to this story. Dude goes to Switzerland and meets other people like him who remember previous lives. And by the way, these people are all like fabulously wealthy, as you would be, because like if you can remember what you've done in previous lives, you can recall skills, you can recall the locations of certain valuable artifacts, and you can, accrue a great degree of wealth because you have experience beyond what normal people would have. And so they have a lot of sway in the world. It's not quite like Illuminati. Well, it's kind of Illuminati vibes almost. They're a secret society who have great power in the world thanks to their unique abilities to recall past lives. And then I would have had the main character join that group and then realize that they're actually evil, and then have this book, which is presented as his testament, be like a tell-all. Like I have to expose these people to let the world know what's going on. That would have lent some kind of conflict to this story because it is sorely lacking. There is no anything really at the heart of this book. It's just guy goes from point A to point B and does a couple things, and that's pretty much it. But not only does this book lack any sense of conflict, it lacks much depth. I'm not trying to say that every book has to be some kind of intense philosophical exploration of whatever, but this book in particular could and really needed to dive into that a little bit. I mean, it's about freaking reincarnation. It's one of the most hotly contested question in human life is what happens after that life. And then this book is kind of answers that question, or at least for some people at least, but it doesn't do anything with that. It doesn't explore anything like it could have. Like the main character never even questions why. Well, he does kind of question why certain people remember their past lives and why others don't. But there's precious little discussion of that, and he doesn't even bother to question why it starts. Because like some of these people in this book in the Cognomina organization are like thousands of years old. They remember, just life after life after life, and he only remembers 2. Like he's only been reincarnating since like World War II, and it's like, wouldn't it be logical to ask why it starts, how it starts, like why does any of this work, how does any of this work? But no, it's just taken for granted that it does, and it's never questioned or interrogated. But beyond that, this book could have been such an interesting exploration of gender because Evan enters into a sexual relationship with Poppy, the woman who discovers him and kind of takes him under her wing. So they become lovers. But what could have been so interesting is that if they had explored, the ramifications of, being physically intimate with someone who has been both male and female in the past, in our contemporary, somewhat gender nebulous society, this book really stood it really had the opportunity to maybe be a really insightful exploration of gender and what really determines someone's outlook regarding gender. Is it physical or is it mental? Because all these people have been um, male and female in past lives, and they have sex with men and women. So there were some questions that you could have played around with, and again, given this some depth. But beyond even that, this could have been a very penetrative exploration of the self, and an exploration of what constitutes a person. Because consciousness is such a badly understood thing. No one even knows what consciousness really is, and what really makes a person. Is a person something intrinsic to their biology, or is a person just an accretion of memories and experiences? And this book, more than maybe any other book, could have explored that. You have people that remember living uh, previous existences prior to the one that they're living now, and like, who are they really? Are they the first person? Are they, what actually are they? Like, what constitutes a person? If they can, remember past lives, are they? I mean, it just could have done so much more, and there are a couple of instances where it does kind of get a little bit contemplative, where the characters, because many of the people in the Cognomina organization, they're like hedonists of some variety, because they're like, well, what's the point of living virtuously if you're just going to come back again and again? Just do whatever you want. Because like Poppy, like, shoots heroin and just has orgies with whoever, and Evan is kind of taken aback by that. He's like, this is kind of against what I know in my life, what you should be like. And so there's some kind of Nietzschean discussion where they're like, we're superior to everybody else because we don't shackle ourselves with false morality, because it's not, it doesn't lead to anything. You're just going to come back again and again. So just live how you want. And that's something, but it wasn't even close to being enough. It's remarkably shallow, and this book could have been quite deep, actually. But I will say, on the positives, the writing in this book is pretty strong, actually. Again, I think this is a debut novel, and the writing, it's not the greatest I've ever read, but it reads well. It's pretty well written. I'll give it that. This is not clumsy. This He avoided the debut novel habit of being a little bit inept in some respects in the writing. So it reads well enough. I don't have any real complaints with the writing, but the character of Evan is passable, but you would think that he would have done, yet again, you would think he could have done more with this. We don't really know a lot about him on a personal level. It's just that we know he lived two previous lives, although ironically, the life that he's living now, we know absolutely no background about, really. And he's very confused, obviously, as you would be, and he feels a newfound sense of family when he's introduced to these other people like him. So that's something. And then there's some kind of friction and romantic friction between he and Poppy after they get intimate, and that's something, but still, it's on the thinner side and maybe just barely passable, if I'm being honest, in regards to the characters. But this book, again, it's just a catalog of wasted potential and missed opportunity. There was so much that could have been done with this book, and so little ultimately was. This book was frustrating, but beyond that, it was just disappointing, really. So to rate the Reincarnationist Papers, I'm going to give this book a C. On a technical level, it's fine. The writing is pretty good, actually. Um, and it has a really strong premise as its foundation. Like the actual idea of this book is really cool. It's just that it doesn't capitalize on it in the slightest, and it's just, again, wasted potential and missed opportunity. So yeah, I'm going to give the Reincarnationist Papers a C. It's an okay book, but it could have been actually really great, and it wasn't. But so have you read the Reincarnationist Papers? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about the book, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. Or have you seen the movie Infinite? Have you seen that movie with Mark Wahlberg? Because again, I heard it was terrible. I haven't seen it. But if you've seen that, also let me know. And could I recommend this if you haven't read this book? Maybe if you get it like I did for $1.99, I might can recommend this. But I'm not really going to recommend this otherwise, because it's just kind of bleh. It just doesn't do what it could have done, what it should have done, and it's just disappointing because of that. But as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.